we have to look at what happens when metals and acid react. Let's have a look at this graphic here. Let's put the sodium in the acid. Well, you can see that it will react, it floats on the surface, and it will burn. Now, you will not actually be doing this because already sodium reacts very rigorously with water. It will explode in acid. So this you will not actually see. We could try magnesium. The magnesium sinks, but you can see a great deal of bubbles appearing there. So there's some kind of gas that's given off. The next one is iron goes in. If you look very carefully, you can see also a number of bubbles, perhaps not as much as the magnesium, but there are bubbles there. The lead, can you see anything happening there? A few bubbles maybe, if you look very carefully. The last one is copper. What happens when copper goes in there? Absolutely nothing. Okay, so you can see that the sodium is very reactive, followed by the magnesium, the iron, the lead, and finally the copper is not reactive at all. So let's say there's magnesium and acid. What do the bubbles mean? It means there's a gas produced. And how can you test to find out if the gas produced is hydrogen? What you do is you put a burning splint at the top and you get what's called a squeaky pop as the gas ignites, and that means it burns, which means that a hydrogen is produced in this reaction. So magnesium and acid produces hydrogen. So when a metal reacts with an acid, the products that are produced are a salt and a hydrogen gas. So we have a metal and acid gives salt plus hydrogen. Now the salt depends on which kind of acid you have and which kind of metal you have. If the metal is put in hydrochloric acid, you will produce that metal chloride and hydrogen. If the metal is put with sulfuric acid, the salt produced is that metal sulfate and also hydrogen. When the metal reacts with nitric acid, the salt produced is a metal nitrate. For example, if you put magnesium and nitric acid, what salts will be produced? Well, it's magnesium and nitric. It will be magnesium nitrate and hydrogen. If you have iron and sulfuric acid, it will produce iron, sulfate and hydrogen. If you have zinc and hydrochloric acid, it will produce zinc chloride and hydrogen. And if you have a metal and another acid and it produces lead sulfate, well, if it produces lead sulfate, the metal must be lead. And if it produces a sulfate, it must be sulfuric acid. Some metals react more vigorously with acids than others. And we can put the metals in an order of reactivity. This is called the Reactivity Series. The metals that are at the top are the most reactive. The metals at the bottom are the least reactive. The more reactive the metal, the more vigorous the reaction. A metal that is below hydrogen will not react with dilute acids. Now we're going to look at the equations that go with these reactions with acids. So magnesium and hydrochloric acid makes magnesium chloride and hydrogen. Aluminium makes aluminium chloride and hydrogen. Zinc and hydrochloric acid makes zinc chloride and hydrogen. And the balanced equation for magnesium is Mg plus 2HCl, 2 MgCl2 and H2. Notice that on the left hand side there are 2 H's, on the right hand side there are 2 H's. On the left hand side there are 2 Cl's, on the right hand side there are 2 Cl's. So these will always balance, they should always balance. This is more complicated. You have 2 aluminiums and 6 HCl produces 2 lots of AlCl3 and 3 lots of H2. Zn plus 2HCl makes ZnCl2 and H2. Now to summarise observations, we have the reaction with cold acid and the reaction with hot acid. You will not be using hot acid. So magnesium, they're fizzed rapidly, producing a great deal of hydrogen. With hot acid, we didn't do that. You wouldn't do that. Aluminium, in hot acid, bubbled quickly. Copper, no reaction in the hot or the cold acid. Iron, no reaction in cold acid, but a little bit of bubbling in the hot acid. The lead, no reaction in the cold acid, and the odd bubble with the hot acid. Calcium was very reactive in the hot acid, and there was a moderate bubbling of the zinc in the hot acid. Which of these metals is the most reactive with acid? Which is the least reactive with the acid? So these are the metals in order of reactivity. Let's put these photos in order of reactivity. I think the magnesium was very reactive. It was producing so much hydrogen it was floating. Then zinc, then iron, then copper. Should we solve? Correct.